So now as we jump into verse 8, now at this time it was the custom of the priests of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to offer up upon the altar which was built in the land of Chaldea for the offering unto these strange gods, men, women, and children. So isn't it fascinating how the devil takes things that God has established, in this case sacrifice, where Adam and Eve were taught to sacrifice animals to the Lord. And then the devil has a counterfeit where there are a lot of similar elements here, but he has twisted it to one of the most evil practices in the history of the world. So Abraham's right there in the middle of this practice going on. Look at verse 11. Now the priests had offered up on this altar 3 virgins at one time who were the daughters of Onidah, one of the royal descent directly from the loins of Ham. Why? Why did these 3 daughters lose their life? Because of their virtue. They would not bow down to worship gods of wood or of stone. Therefore, they were killed upon this altar, and it was done after the manner of the Egyptians.
In fact, I think if we look at this, I can't read God's mind to know why does He deliver Abraham and not deliver these 3 fair virgins that are so full of virtue. But I think we can think of at least a couple of things. One, there's clearly a work left for Abraham to do. Abraham has to do something, and my guess that's why he's delivered. And maybe before we move to other things, maybe I can just touch on a couple of historical, cultural elements of this sacrifice story. Because what you get here is it presents the picture of a mixing of Canaanite and Egyptian religious practices. And that's really interesting. And we can actually kind of plot out where are the places where the Egyptians did actively try and control some areas because they were key for trade routes and military routes and things like that. And so we're going to guess that Abraham is in one of those areas. There are nearby areas that they just completely left alone because it didn't matter economically and from a strategic point of view for them. So we can kind of guess where Abraham is, but we also have to think, okay, it talks about they sacrificed them. It says specifically after the manner of the Egyptians. But what does that mean? Does it mean the Egyptians were often offering children? Probably not. And in fact, I've studied this a lot. I do think that the story we see here fits with Egyptian practice very well. We see that the Egyptians did sacrifice people when those people were disturbing the correct religious order and preaching against the worship of Egyptian gods and knocking down gods. That would certainly do that, right? And there was a specific way they would do it on an altar, and you could use a knife, and it's a flint knife. They look a lot like what's pictured in this facsimile, and that kind of a thing. And then they would burn them. And in a lot of the traditions, they say they were going to burn Abraham, and this one talks about using a knife. And I think that both are probably correct. You use a knife like you do with an animal. You kill it, and then you burn it. But the idea of child and children, that's probably more of a Canaanite practice. And we do know that happens from the Bible. We know that happens from some of the local culture around there. And that's what I think you're getting here is this mixing of culture, which is exactly what the text describes, is you get those 2 cultures mixing together, and when they mix together, it perfectly creates the scenario that we see happening in this story. It just fits with that time period and with what we know of their practices from that time period.
It's very helpful. Thank you.